Hi, I'm Chuck Gifford, and I'll be reading selections from this week's January the 9th, 2025, Nantucket Inquirer Mirror. Our first story today comes from the top of the front page and is headlined, Now or Never. Select Board says new Our Island home last chance to keep elderly care on island, by Kay Quigley. Editor's note. The original version of this story indicated that housing planned on the OIH site was intended for OIH staff. It is in fact intended for Sherburne Commons employees. January 2nd. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore says the vote on whether to invest $100 million in a new Our Island home nursing home at May's annual town meeting will be a bellwether for the future of elderly care on the island. We have to decide whether we're going to invest in it, and if we don't, it's time we move on. I feel really strongly about that, Moore said at a Select Board meeting earlier this month. For me, as a board member, this is the last proposal for having a municipal nursing home. It is not, do we move it to another lot? Do we do a different model? We have spent millions and millions of dollars assessing this market and community needs, designing a beautiful facility, one that would serve our community well. This is the decision, she said. If this doesn't pass, we most likely will be making moves to exit this business, Select Board Member Dawn Hill Holgate said. Board members were given an update on December 18th on the 50,000 square foot, 45-bed nursing home proposed for the Sherburne Commons Elderly Living Campus off South Shore Road that would replace the current facility on East Creek Road along the waterfront. Building plans have been completed and approved by the Planning Board. The plans now need to be approved by the Historic District Commission. The HDC is expected to review the building later this month. Pending HDC approval, the town will start taking bids for construction of the facility. About $96 million in capital funding would need to be approved by town meeting voters for this facility to actually be built. If approved, construction would begin in September. It would take an estimated 2 years to complete the facility and would open in 2028. But the $96 million the town is asking for may not be the final bill. The State Department of Public Health requires newly built skilled nursing facilities to pay certain fees and agree to give 3% of the capital cost toward a community benefit. Now, the town is arguing for an exemption from the community benefit requirement because it is meant for privately owned facilities, whereas the new Our Island home, like the current one, would be the state's only municipally owned and operated nursing home. Town manager Libby Gibson said that the community benefit in this case would be the facility itself. It is not guaranteed the state agrees to waive those costs, Gibson said, though town officials are optimistic. We may have other things to think about if we don't get the exemption, Gibson said. If the benefit funds do need to be paid, it would tack on an extra $3 million or so to the project's costs. Conversely, the town may be able to raise private money that would reduce the investment required from taxpayers, Assistant Town Manager Rick Sears said. We may be able to make that a little more palatable if we have a successful fundraising approach, he said. Hill Holgate indicated that there are parties that have shown interest in that. I think that there are significant opportunities there, she said. Board members also looked at the projected operational costs of the new facility. Sears said the new facility would be more financially viable than the current nursing home on East Creek Road. 2/3 of the residents at the current facility are in Medicaid, which necessitates a daily subsidy of about $600 a day per person, equivalent to about $4 million a year funded by taxpayer dollars. But those with private insurance do not pay enough to cover the expenses to cover for them. The facility already operates at a loss, and expenses are only expected to go up by millions a year in the next 5 years, and revenue isn't increasing enough to make up for that, Sears said. Having a new facility would lead to increased revenue, Sears said. A state-of-the-art nursing home will attract more residents and allow for higher rates to be set for private pay residents, helping recoup some of the money currently lost in caring for those patients. Consultants are also looking at how to attract more Medicare patients because the facility is reimbursed at a higher rate for that care. That is the secret sauce to get the quality mix of managed Medicare and private pay combined to have a higher revenue base. Medicaid patients will always be there, Bob Eisenstein of the senior care consulting firm EF and Associates said this month. The new facility would also cost less to run in general. Planned as a net zero building, the facility should be able to write off essentially all utility costs, saving about $150,000 a year. A better work environment in a new facility should also attract more full-time nurses, Sears said. That would mean that the facility has to rely less on hiring travel nurses who cost double what an in-house nurse would. In total, Sears estimates hiring full-time nurses would save the facility an average of $200,000 a year over the first 3 years of operation, providing the town is able to house them on island. Voters are going to have to assess not only are they willing to pay more taxes to build the building, but do we also want to be in a position of heavily subsidizing a component of health care for our seniors in perpetuity, Moore said. Once we spend $100 million plus, we're locked into whatever the overhead is to run the facility over time. It comes as a package. It's not buy it, you own it. It's buy it, and you're going to pay for it, Moore said. Front page, our next story is headlined, Summer Resident David Rubenstein awarded nation's highest civilian honor, by Joshua Balling, January 5th. Summer resident David Rubenstein, philanthropist, owner of the Baltimore Orioles, and co-founder of the global private equity firm, the Carlyle Group, was honored at the White House Saturday with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the country's highest civilian honor. Rubenstein was recognized for his philanthropy and support for the restoration of national landmarks and preservation of historic documents prior to President Joe Biden's placing the medal around his neck. The Baltimore-born billionaire told the Nantucket Project in 2013, he's a firm believer that there are only two things you can do with your money, keep it or give it away. Over the past 2 decades, he's been giving it away, in a big way. Rubenstein concentrates most of his giving on education and medical research, pledging or donating more than $75 million to the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., where he's been the chairman of the board for over a decade, and donating $44 million to his alma mater, Duke University, $3.5 million to Harvard, $10 million to the University of Chicago Law School, and $6 million to Johns Hopkins, according to multiple media reports. Rubenstein has also hosted the First Family and other leaders of state at his Abrams Point summer home, engages in what he calls philanthropic, patriotic philanthropy. He has given $10 million to the Thomas Jefferson Foundation to restore former slave quarters in Monticello, $5 million to the Library of Congress National Book Festival, and $4.5 million to the National Zoo's Panda Research Program. He has also contributed to the Iwo Jima Memorial, the Smithsonian, the National Archives, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. In addition, he has provided the U.S. government with long-term loans of his copies of rare documents like the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the 13th Amendment. In 2007, he purchased a 710-year-old copy of the Magna Carta for $21.3 million. The document, an English charter originally issued in 1215, that lays the groundwork for much of today's current law, is considered one of the most important legal documents in history and has been referred to by scholars as the Declaration of Human Rights and the Birth Certificate of Freedom. The Magna Carta was the inspiration for the Declaration of Independence, the inspiration for the Bill of Rights. I didn't want it to leave the country, he said at the time, calling his philanthropy a down payment on my obligation to repay this country for the good fortune I've had. Rubinstein was in some iconic company on Saturday's medal ceremony at the White House. This year's 18 other Medal of Freedom recipients were chef and World Central Kitchen founder Jose Andres, U2 frontman and human rights activist Bono, the late Secretary of State Ashton Carter, former Secretary of State, U.S. Senator, First Lady, and presidential candidate Hillary Rodham Clinton, actor and Parkinson's disease research advocate Michael J. Fox, entrepreneur and LGBTQI rights advocate Tim Gill, world-renowned primate researcher and conservationist Jane Goodall, the late civil rights pioneer Fannie Lou Hamer, Hall of Fame basketball player, entrepreneur, and philanthropist Irvin Magic Johnson, the late U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Senator, and presidential candidate Robert Kennedy, fashion icon and philanthropist Ralph Lauren, international soccer star and UNICEF ambassador Lionel Messi, science educator and environmental stewardship advocate William Bill Nye the Science Guy, Nye, the late businessman, Governor of Michigan, and Secretary of Housing and Urban Development George W. Romney, investor, philanthropist, and founder of Open Society Foundations George Soros, writer, director, author, playwright, and founder of the American Film Institute and the Kennedy Center Honors George Stevens, Jr., actor, director, producer, and National Boys and Girls Club of America spokesperson Denzel Washington, and fashion icon and Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is presented to individuals who have made exemplary contributions to the prosperity, values, or security of the United States, world peace, or other significant societal, public or private endeavors, according to a White House press release. Quote, President Biden believes great leaders keep the faith, give everybody a fair shot, and put decency above all else. These 19 individuals are great leaders who have made America and the world a better place. They are great leaders because they are good people who have made extraordinary contributions to their country and the world. End quote, according to the release. Our next story, the last from the front page, is headlined, New Program Offering Incentives to House Homeless Youth by Kay Quigley, January 6th. The town and Nantucket Community Solutions for Behavioral Health want to help homeless young adults on the island get back on their feet. They're partnering with the Homeless Prevention Council, a Cape Cod-based nonprofit that helps house about 2,000 people a year, to provide a new program on the island called Host Homes. Property owners will be offered $1,000 a month to host an 18 to 24-year-old in one of their extra rooms or apartments for a short time, typically 4 to 12 months. Both parties would go through a vetting and matching process to make sure that they're agreeable and compatible. The program is intended as a way to temporarily relieve the stress of housing insecurity for young adults who either can't afford to rent a room or can't find one, Community Solutions Executive Director Rosemary McLaughlin said this week. It seems like such a natural fit here, where perhaps they are one bedroom and extra space and you get supports, McLaughlin said. While tackling the housing crisis isn't its main mission, Community Solutions is committed to helping young people overcome their greatest stresses, McLaughlin said on Monday. For between 10 to 20 young adults on island that she knows of, the biggest stressor is housing insecurity. We're not a housing agency, that's not our focus, but for young people, housing insecurity is so detrimental, McLaughlin said. Adverse experiences in childhood, such as housing insecurity, have been shown to have lasting effects of trauma on a person's life, she said. During ages 18 to 24, the focus should be on transitions in education, job opportunities, social identity, and personal relationships. Attention on housing insecurity diverts or slows foundational development of life and coping skills, which can have a lifelong impact. Housing insecurity has been shown to increase anxiety and depression, in particular for young adults, McLaughlin said. Not having housing also delays access to health care. Stressors such as these affect both physical and mental health, she said. She remembers 2 people in particular who came to Community Solutions last spring in desperate need of housing. One had only just turned 18. That sparked conversations between Community Solutions, the Warming Place, Nantucket Public Schools, the Community Foundation, and the Homeless Prevention Council about how to help young people off the streets. Let's have a plan, as opposed to a crisis, McLaughlin said. Host Homes was created out of those conversations. The program will be run by the Cape-based council and is funded by the state and federal governments. McLaughlin emphasized that Host Homes is not a rental program like Act Now's Lease for Locals program. That incentivizes property owners to rent extra rooms out to year-round islanders. This is not a rental situation. It's a guest and a host, she said. During the program, both the guest and the host get support from program coordinators, McLaughlin said. Hosts will be checked in monthly to make sure that the stay is going well while the guest pursues whatever they need to get their feet back under them. Assuming things are working well, the relationship could, at the parties' discretion, evolve into a longer-term landlord-renter arrangement. Generally, however, the stays are intended to be short stints where the guests don't have to worry about rent. This is short-term. This is 4 to 12 months, and what is the guest going to be working on during that time frame for their next step, McLaughlin said? That next step could be finding other housing or a job or pursuing further education, for example, she said. The Town and Community Solutions are hoping to find suitable hosts at a pair of informal meetings about the program Thursday, January 9th, scheduled for 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. at the town's Human Services Department office at 131 Pleasant Street and via Zoom. Ideally, we have a handful of host homes available, she said. Host Homes is the latest effort to combat the town's affordable housing crisis. It's another piece in the toolkit, McLaughlin said. She hopes the program will show the value in the town working with other communities and organizations to help fight the housing crisis. Quote, "We don't have to have every solution ourselves. Help is okay. This program is set up. Let's access that help. They have funding. They want to do it. Let's make it happen," end quote, she said. For more information on the program, call 508-257-1317. Our next story is headlined, "Former Nantucket Teacher Being Sued for Sexual Harassment by Berkshire's Student," by Kate Quigley, January 9th. A former Nantucket high school teacher is being sued in federal court by a Pittsfield student claiming he sexually harassed her in class. Robert Barsanti, 59, an English teacher on Nantucket for about 15 years prior to leaving the island in the early 2000s, is accused in the suit by a 17-year-old student from Pittsfield High School. The lawsuit, also filed against the Pittsfield Public Schools, alleges Barsanti engaged in, quote, "unwelcome conduct on the basis of sex that was so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive," end quote, that it affected the student's education at the Berkshires school. Barsanti made several sexual comments toward plaintiff that were extreme and outrageous behavior toward a minor child, end quote. The civil suit filed in the U.S. District Court in Springfield in September of 2024 reads. The Pittsfield student, who was 16 at the time the alleged incidents occurred, claims Barsanti made overt sexual references to her and used innuendo in the classroom on several occasions. She also claims the teacher once tried to coax her into a janitor's closet, which she refused. Barsanti taught English in Pittsfield for nearly 20 years, starting in 2006, after leaving his Nantucket teaching job in 2002. According to a report from the Inquirer Mirror in 2003, he was placed on leave from his teaching job on Nantucket between the years of 2000 and 2002, quote, after discussions with administrators about his teaching style, a style that reportedly included the use of foul language and sexual innuendo in the classroom, end quote. He retired from teaching in June of 2024. Allegations in the civil suit include the Pittsfield student saying that she asked Barsanti for a laptop to do her school homework at home. He allegedly replied with several sexually suggestive comments about the student's mother, according to court filings. Barsanti is also accused of making students read and write about a North Shore strip club called the Golden Banana, where he allegedly told students he used to work. The student made a formal Title IX complaint to the school regarding Barsanti's behavior in November of 2023. The investigation found Barsanti engaged in sexual harassment, according to court filings. The attorney representing Barsanti in the civil case, Jeffrey Trapani of the law firm Pierce, Davis, and Peritano, did not reply to repeated requests for comment this week. Island students and parents allegedly complained about similar behavior from Barsanti at the time he was teaching at Nantucket High School, according to the 2003 I&M report. Former Nantucket students reached by the Inquirer Mirror this week, however, did not have that memory of him. Half a dozen former NHS students who had Barsanti as a teacher in the 1990s said that they could not recall any similar behavior when they asked about it this week. I never had a bad experience with Barsanti, Mary Lepre said this week. She graduated from NHS in 1995 and remembers having Barsanti as a teacher twice, her sophomore and her senior years. Quote, I've literally known him my whole life and really liked him and think he's wonderful. He was a great teacher, end quote, Lepre said. Continuing, quote, I had nothing but really great experiences with him. He was one of the teachers that helped prepare us for college. He came over on a weekend to help me write my college essays, end quote. The consensus of the students reached by the I&M was that Barsanti was, quote, was not a, quote, normal, end quote, teacher. He may have been a, quote, a little bit weird and eccentric, end quote, but none of his words or actions crossed a line that made them uncomfortable, they said. Barsanti, also an author, lives in Dalton, according to his LinkedIn profile. He could not be reached for comment. He has written 2 books about Nantucket and several short essays on his Substack called, quote, Barred for Life, end quote. He has also written a book about teaching. His work has appeared in island publications such as Yesterday's Island and Nantucket Magazine, and he has also been published in the New York Times and Boston Globe, among other places, according to his LinkedIn bio. And finally, we have the district court report with the headline, Island Man Allegedly Stole SUV While Intoxicated, by Kay Quigley, January 7th. An Easton Street man was arraigned in Nantucket District Court Monday on motor vehicle theft charges for allegedly stealing a Ford Explorer and crashing it while drunk. Vincent Benoit, 20, of 77 Easton Street, pleaded innocent to the January 4th charges of larceny of a motor vehicle, operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol, negligent operation of a motor vehicle, leaving the scene of property damage, operating a motor vehicle with a suspended license, and a motor vehicle lights violation. He was ordered to return to court March the 3rd for a pretrial hearing. According to the police report, Benoit was pulled over on Old South Road after police saw him driving the vehicle around 1:30 a.m. Saturday. The Ford had heavy damage to the front and rear end and no operational lights. When police pulled Benoit over, he said the vehicle did not belong to him. When asked if it was stolen, Benoit said, quote, "Technically, yes," end quote, according to the report. He was then placed under arrest. Further investigation revealed Benoit was driving with a suspended license and had crashed at least 2 places earlier in the evening. Police were able to identify one of the crash sites as the Cumberland Farms on Orange Street. Benoit can be seen in security footage backing up the SUV at a high rate of speed and crashing it into a storage shed on the property, according to the report. While being processed by police, Benoit consented to 5 field sobriety tests and 2 breathalyzer tests. He failed all 5 field tests, according to the report, and had a blood alcohol level of 0.191%, over twice the legal limit to drive. He paid $1,000 bail to be released after his arrest. In other district court news Monday, Juan Vasquez Velata, 26, of 16D Teasdale Circle, will have on November 26, 2024, charges of negligent operation of a motor vehicle and operating a motor vehicle with his license suspended, continued without a finding for 1 year on the condition he complete his probation without a violation. He will also have a December 15, 2024 charge of operating a motor vehicle with his license suspended, continued without a finding for 6 months on the condition he complete his probation without a violation. Velata also pleaded to a May 24, 2024 charge of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol and will have the charge continued without a finding for 1 year on the condition he complete his probation without a violation, forfeit his license for 45 days, complete a driver alcohol education program, and pay a $250 program fee. Velata will also have an April 13, 2023 charge of assault and battery, continued without a finding for 1 year on the condition that he complete his probation without a violation. After being continued without a finding for 1 year and completing his probation without a violation, Estute Alvarado, 32, of 16 Trip Drive, had an April 20, 2023 charge of felony breaking and entering a building in the nighttime and malicious destruction of property under $1,200 dismissed. Charges of assault and battery, 2 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, and possessing ammunition without a firearms identification card were dismissed in light of his plea last January. Fitzroy Burrell, 34, of 26 Youngs Way, had 3 September 2, 2024 charges of assault and battery on a family or household member and 2 counts of strangulation or suffocation stemming from 2 different incidences, dismissed due to a lack of prosecution. Hotane Edwards, 38, of 55 Essex Road, had a default warrant issued for his arrest for failure to appear in court to face August 28, 2024 charges of operating a motor vehicle without his license suspended, and operating an uninsured motor vehicle. Andrew Falkenstein, 37, of Newton, had 7 January 11, 2024 charges of vandalizing property and a charge of trespassing dismissed after a motion to dismiss the case due to a lack of probable cause was accepted. Dylan Fleischert, 31, of 13A Amelia Drive, was arraigned on a September 10, 2024 charge of operating a motor vehicle with his license suspended. The charge will be dismissed on the condition he pays $100 in court costs. He was found not responsible for failure to stop or yield in a motor vehicle lights violation stemming from the same incident. Richard Laurent, 56, of 1 Windy Way, Apartment B, was arraigned on January 1st charge of assault and battery on a family or household member. Not guilty and not responsible pleas were entered on his behalf, and he was ordered to return to court February 3rd for a pretrial hearing. Jason Scott Richard, 51, of 1 Washerman Avenue, had a default warrant issued for his arrest for failure to appear in court for a probation violation hearing stemming from January 9, 2024, charges of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol and leaving the scene of property damage. Gabriel Tomaz, 31, of 25 Pequot Street, was arraigned on a September 5, 2024 charge of unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle. The charge will be dismissed on the condition he pay $100 in court costs. A charge of failure to stop or yield stemming from the same incident was dismissed. Wayne Jowry, 38, of 1 Chatham Road, was arraigned on a September 25, 2024 charge of operating a motor vehicle with his license suspended. The charge will be dismissed on the condition he pays $100 in court costs. That's all I have time for. This is your reader, Chuck Gifford, saying goodbye, and thanks for listening.